Ryan's at Froman's with his grandparents in LA.
After seeing the American finale, which was awesome.
For a little Q&A.
Well, that's not what I was there for, but we're taking it together.
No, but we're now at Froman's for a little Q&A.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's Grandma. Whoa.
No,
All right,
no,
Ryan.
I want to do Poppa first.
Okay, Poppa first.
This makes for good TV.
Okay.
What am I doing?
How was it like being a Jew in New York?
When you were growing up.
That's all I knew. The Jews. In New York.
You can give me a little bit more.
Huh?
Tell me how it was like.
Well, it was like all our friends were Jews. In my case. And my parents' friends were Jews.
Are you guys getting this?
My parents were Jews. My sister was Jewish. My cousins
That's not what I'm
were
looking
Jewish.
for.
Everybody
How
was
was it like?
What is it? Ask
Okay,
the grandma.
Grandma wants to elaborate on that.
He's worthless, so.
No. Well, Ryan, before you move off of that, I think he's actually telling you something important, which is when he was growing up in New York, you actually were part of a large Jewish community. A lot of people were Jewish. You felt like it was the norm as opposed to being the minority, which is actually an important element of what it was like for him growing up in New York as a Jewish boy. Okay, Grandma.
Following in that same vein, the schools were all closed on Jewish holidays because most of the teachers were Jewish and about half the kids in every class were Jewish, and so they just closed the schools on those days, and we had many Jewish holidays in the fall of every year.
What about Christmas?
Well, we lived in an apartment building, and there was a great big Christmas tree in the lobby of the apartment building, and the Jewish children, who were most of the kids who lived in that building, loved to watch as the as he was called, the superintendent of the building, would trim the tree. Another interesting fact, the neighborhood was half Jewish and half Catholic. And the Jews and the Catholics, unfortunately, did not mix.
Why not?
The elementary school and the Catholic elementary school were almost across the street from one another. And in those days, children were taught by the nuns that Jews were Christ killers. And so they didn't like us.
What?
And on Halloween, they would beat us up.
Really?
That is correct. The only time the kids on my street, who were half Jewish and half Catholic, ever got together was when we played jump rope, because we needed a large group to do our on-time jumping.
Oh, God.
That was the only time we had anything to do with one another.
Wow.
Otherwise, we stayed in our own little groups, which is kind of too bad.
Why did the nuns discriminate against the Jews so much?
Because in those days, that's how they thought, and that's what they were taught. It was only when they had the second, I think, ecumenical council with Pope, was it John Paul, who finally changed the tone and said that Jews are not responsible for the death of Jesus. Up until then, there was a lot of friction between the two groups.
Didn't the Christians remember that Christ was Jewish?
They did. They seem to want to forget that part.
Okay, what else, Mom?
What else?
What else do you remember about growing up as a Jewish girl in New York?
Well, my grandmother and my grandfather were religious Jews, which meant that they were Orthodox. That meant that on the weekend, you couldn't turn a light on in their house. Toilet paper was torn in advance and left on the roll because that was considered work. That was considered work. We went every Saturday to my grandparents' house for lunch, where we had delicious chicken soup and roast chicken and vegetables, and all of it had to be prepared on a hot plate because they would roast it the day before, and then they would put everything on a hot plate with the flame on very, very low, so that it could stay warm, because you weren't allowed to turn on a light, you weren't allowed to turn on the stove, you couldn't, there was no TV, but you couldn't do any of those things. And if you needed to do it, you had to find some Christian person to do it for you, called a,
Dad, this is important. Sit down.
I won't
Sit
say
down.
what they were.
This is important. We're interviewing you.
You know what?
We're still interviewing
Grandma,
you.
why didn't you just decide to do it?
What?
Why didn't you just decide to turn on the light if you had to?
Because it was not appropriate in my grandparents' house. I turned the light on in my house, in my parents' house, but not in their house.
I guess I'm not really an expert on the food.
Not that much.
Dad,
Yes?
tell us another memory of what it was like to grow up Jewish in New York.
My memory is
Other than
that I was
saying
bar
you were
mitzvahed.
Jewish. Can you talk about the story of the bar mitzvah test?
Oh yeah, that's good. Let's do
Yeah,
that.
I was a little foolish. At my bar mitzvah, the rabbi, in the course of the service, said that this boy, meaning me, had the potential to be a very great Jewish something or other
Rabbi.
because he got the highest score on the bar mitzvah test.
Why did you get such
The
a high
bar
score?
mitzvah test was a test that right after I went through all the bar mitzvah training, they said to me, you have to take this test, and if you don't pass this test, your bar mitzvah is off. Well,
Did you actually want to
I
have
took
a bar
them
mitzvah?
seriously, and I was afraid that my parents, after all their planning for the bar mitzvah, would have to cancel it. So I crammed for that test like probably no one else has ever crammed. And that's why I got such a high mark.
But was it real? If you didn't pass, is it true that you wouldn't have a bar
I
mitzvah?
have no idea. But I
No,
believe- I believe
Papa.
that. What?
No. What he told me before was it was all a joke, and he was the only child who actually
Took it
believed
seriously.
that the test would happen.
Like you, actually, believing things
That
that
could be. That could be. Yeah.
Is this for Sunday school? Or is this just a mockery session?
What did he say? What did he say?
you want to know if this was for Sunday school or whether it was a mockery test.
The mockery session.
You know, I don't like the way you take advantage of your papa. You seem to
Okay, one
always
more
find-
question for Grandma.
Huh?
One more question for Grandma.
Come on,
What,
Joe, please.
Dad, 2 more minutes. This is important. What's something else you remember? You were saying something about seeing
Oh
people-
yes, after the war, World War II, there were many refugees that settled in New York City. And many of them, as a child, I noticed, had a number on the inside of their arm, which was branded on them when they were in a concentration camp in Europe. And that made a very big impression on me about what oppression is like and what it is to be against people because of their religion or the color of their skin.
Because of all the discrimination by the Catholics to the Jews when you were growing up, was it particularly hard for you, Grandma, to, I'm looking at the camera, to see all the discrimination by other people and other religions against the Jews? Does it feel like you had a target on your back?
Did it feel like you had what?
A target on your back.
In many ways, not, because I was under the ridiculous impression that Jews were in the majority.
Because there were so many Jews in New York.
Because there were
You
so
thought
many
that there
Jews
were-
in my neighborhood, so many Jews in New York City, so many things that happened as a result of there being Jews, like schools closing on the Jewish holiday, that I didn't realize that we were a minority as opposed to a majority.
For
But I
example,
will
look around.
say,
I say that. Sorry for that.
I will say that as I became a teenager,
Okay.
Ryan Jacob Edward Neal, I was aware of the fact that there was a lot of discrimination against black people. And the civil rights movement made a very strong impression on me because their civil rights were as important as ours. And if we discriminate against anyone, there's always the possibility that the Jews will be discriminated against again. And we have to guard against that kind of thing.
What were some of the things you did Do you want to know what she did to get involved in the civil rights movement?
If you keep giving such long answers,
I know, we have to get
we're
out.
going to have guests standing
All right.
outside.
Last question then. What kinds of things did you do to get involved in the
No,
civil rights movement?
no. I have to try.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, maybe we'll talk about them in the car. Grandma, when do you think it's going to change? When do you think it's all going to get better?
What's all?
For Jews, for the other religions, especially with all the discrimination and ISIS, when do you think it'll all get better?
When do I think it'll all get better?
My grandfather's in the window.
I think it will get better when we all realize that we are the same on the inside, and even though we are different culturally, or we may look different, we are all human beings deserving the right of to be the best person that we can be, and to have the freedom to be the best we can be.
Thanks, Mama.